"Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the counter." The words hit Samuel Torres like incoming artillery. He'd barely said 3 sentences to the bank teller when Brandon Mitchell, 26-year-old manager, appeared with the swagger of someone who'd never dodged bullets but thought a badge gave him authority over those who had. "Excuse me?" Samuel's voice stayed level, controlled. The same tone he'd used to calm panicked soldiers under fire. "Your ID says you're 34, Brandon continued, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "That would make you what? 16 when you supposedly served in Afghanistan? Come on, man." His laugh was sharp, cutting. "We've had 3 fake veterans try to scam us this month alone." The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like the drone of enemy aircraft. Samuel felt the familiar weight of his bronze star pressing against his chest through his jacket pocket. The scar across his knuckles, shrapnel from Helmand Province, caught the harsh light as he placed both hands flat on the marble counter. "I served 3 tours," Samuel said quietly. 2008 to 2014. "Sure you did, buddy." Brandon's voice dripped with mockery. "And I'm a Navy SEAL." He turned to address the growing crowd of customers. "This is exactly what stolen valor looks like, people." Young guy, clean-cut, playing dress-up soldier for benefits. A woman with her phone already recording leaned closer. "Are you really a veteran?" she asked Samuel, her tone suggesting she'd already made up her mind. Samuel's jaw tightened. The taste of desert dust filled his mouth, a phantom memory that always returned when civilians questioned what he'd bled for. "Ma'am, I just need to make a withdrawal." "From an account you probably opened with fake documents," Brandon interjected, his voice rising with each word. "You know what? I'm calling the police. Stolen valor is a federal crime." The lobby fell dead silent except for the sound of phones being pulled out, cameras focusing, the soft beep of someone starting a live stream. Samuel Torres, Bronze Star recipient, 3-tour combat veteran, man who'd carried wounded Marines through enemy fire, stood alone while a room full of strangers decided whether his service was real enough for their approval. If you believe no one should be treated this way, type honor below. Your voice matters more than you think. Samuel maintained his upright posture, shoulders aligned, as he had learned in the barracks of Kandahar. The cold metal of the counter touched his hands as he waited, patient as he had always been during long vigils in the desert. "The documents are legitimate," he responded with the same calm voice he had used to comfort wounded soldiers. "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq." Brandon laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the air-conditioned environment. "Dude, you look like you're 30. When would you have served?" "At 15. He turned to the teller beside him. "Sarah, have you seen how many veterans show up here wanting easy withdrawals?" The young woman looked away, uncomfortable. Some customers in line began to whisper. Others pulled out their phones. Samuel remained motionless, hands crossed on the counter, observing a small plaque on the wall. This branch was built in 2019 on the grounds of former Fort Henderson Military Base. From his jacket's inner pocket, he took out something small and heavy. With careful fingers, he placed on the marble a military medal, bronze star with ribbon faded by the Middle Eastern sun. The golden medal caught the fluorescent light, revealing an almost worn engraving. "Valor in Combat, S. Torres, 2011. Brandon barely looked at it properly. "Cool, man. Bought it on eBay?" He signaled to the security guard. "Marcus, I think we have another stolen valor case here." Marcus Johnson, a broad-shouldered man in his 40s, approached slowly, but something made him pause. His eyes fixed on the medal, then on Samuel's posture, the way he held himself. Marcus had seen that stance before, in mirrors, in old photos, in the faces of men who had carried more than backpacks on their shoulders. "Sir," Marcus said quietly to Samuel, "that's a bronze star." "Anyone can buy those online," Brandon interrupted, his voice rising. "Look at him. Too young, too clean. Real veterans don't look like accountants." The lobby fell silent. A woman near the coffee station stopped mid-sip. An elderly man filling out a deposit slip looked up with narrowed eyes. Samuel said nothing, just carefully picked up the medal and slid it back into his pocket, his movements precise and controlled. "I'll wait," he said simply. walking to a bench by the window where sunlight streamed through glass, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air like desert sand. There he sat, spine straight, hands folded, watching the American flag across the street wave in the gentle breeze. Not angry, not demanding, just waiting with the infinite patience of a man who had learned that dignity doesn't require an audience. But what Brandon didn't know was that 30 minutes away, someone had already made a phone call that would change everything. The minutes crawled by like hours under the Afghan sun. Samuel remained on the bench, motionless as a statue, while Brandon's voice grew louder behind the counter. The manager was now holding court, entertaining other employees with his theory about fake veterans scamming the system. "I bet he's never even held a real weapon," Brandon said, loud enough for Samuel to hear. "Probably got that medal from a costume shop." A few customers chuckled nervously, their phones still recording. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across Samuel's weathered face. Sarah, the young teller, kept glancing toward the bench, her discomfort growing with each passing joke. "Maybe we should just," she began, but Brandon cut her off. "What? Enable fraud? This is exactly what's wrong with society. Everyone wants to play soldier until it's time to do soldier things." He gestured dramatically toward Samuel. "Look at him. Does he look like he's been in combat? Where are the scars, the PTSD, the 1,000-yard stare?" Samuel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The taste of dust and diesel fuel seemed to fill his mouth. Phantom memories of convoy routes and IED craters. His left hand unconsciously moved to his ribs, where shrapnel had left marks that his pressed shirt concealed. A teenage customer near the ATM whispered to his friend, "Dude, this is going viral. Fake veteran gets exposed." The sound of camera clicks filled the air like the mechanical noise of rifle bolts. Marcus, the security guard, stood by the door, his face a mask of internal conflict. He recognized something in Samuel's stillness, the way real soldiers waited, conserving energy, processing threats. But he also knew his job, his paycheck, his place in this building's hierarchy. "Sir," Brandon called out, his voice dripping with false concern, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're making other customers uncomfortable." Samuel's eyes shifted from the flag outside to Brandon's face. For a moment, something flickered in his gaze. Not anger, but recognition. The same look he'd given insurgents who didn't know they were already surrounded. "I'm not causing any disturbance," Samuel said, his voice steady as bedrock. "I'm just waiting." "Waiting for what? Your fake military buddies to come rescue you?" Brandon's laughter was sharp as broken glass. "This isn't a movie, man. Real life doesn't work that way." The air in the lobby seemed to thicken. Even the skeptical customers began to sense something changing, though they couldn't name what. Samuel simply nodded once, as if Brandon had just confirmed something he already knew. Outside, the flag continued to wave in the afternoon breeze, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of an approaching vehicle carried on the wind. Samuel reached into his jacket one more time, but not for the medal. His fingers found something else, a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the edges. With deliberate care, he unfolded it on his lap where no one else could see. It was a letter, handwritten in careful script. The paper was yellowed, stained with something that might have been tears or might have been blood. At the top, in a child's handwriting, "Thank you for keeping us safe, Sergeant Torres." Below that, in different handwriting, "My daughter wrote this before the cancer took her. She wanted you to know that heroes like you made her feel safe even when she was scared. Maria Gonzalez, Gold Star Mother." Samuel's thumb traced the words gently, the way he had traced them 100 times before. This letter had traveled with him through 2 more deployments, had been pressed against his chest during firefights, had absorbed his sweat and fears and prayers. He looked up at Brandon, who was still performing for his audience, still cracking jokes about wannabe warriors and stolen valor. Samuel could have shown him the letter, could have explained about Maria's daughter, about the school visit where he'd met the sick little girl who drew pictures of soldiers and asked if they were really as brave as her daddy said, but he didn't. Instead, Samuel folded the letter back up, placed it gently in his pocket, and did something that no one in the bank noticed. He stood up, walked to the small memorial plaque on the wall, the same one commemorating Fort Henderson, and placed his palm flat against it for exactly 3 seconds. The bronze surface was warm from the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, but beneath his palm Samuel felt something else, the weight of memory, the echo of footsteps that had walked these halls in different times. The sweet scent of leather from his worn wallet mixed with the sterile air, creating a bridge between past and present. "I remember," he whispered, too quiet for anyone to hear. The plaque was etched with names of men and women who had served on this very ground, who had walked these same halls when they were barracks, who had stood at attention where customers now stood in line. Samuel recognized 3 of the names, soldiers who hadn't made it home from his last deployment. He returned to his seat without a word, without explanation. The gesture meant nothing to the laughing crowd, nothing to the recording phones, nothing to Brandon's ongoing performance. But it meant everything to the man who made it. The glass doors of First National Credit Union swung open with the force of controlled authority. Boot heels clicked against marble with military precision, not rushed, not hesitant, but purposeful as artillery fire. Colonel Patricia Valdez entered like justice itself, her dress blues immaculate, every ribbon and medal positioned with mathematical precision. Behind her, 2 junior officers followed in perfect formation, their silence more commanding than any shouting could be. The lobby fell dead quiet. Phones stopped recording. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the air conditioning seemed to hush in respect. Colonel Valdez's eyes swept the room once, cataloging every face, every detail, before settling on the bench by the window where Samuel Torres sat. Her gaze softened for just a moment. Not with pity, but with recognition, the way one soldier sees another across a crowded room. "Sergeant Torres," she said, her voice carrying the authority of 25 years in uniform. "I apologize for the delay." Samuel rose immediately, muscle memory snapping him to attention. "Ma'am." The colonel turned slowly, her gaze now finding Brandon Mitchell, who had gone pale as winter snow. "I understand there's been some confusion about Sergeant Torres's service record." We were just—" Brandon stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. "You were questioning the authenticity of a Bronze Star recipient," Colonel Valdez said, each word falling like a gavel. "A man who served 3 combat tours, who saved 4 lives under direct enemy fire, who spent 18 months in Walter Reed recovering from wounds received in service to this nation." She stepped closer to Brandon, her presence filling the space between them. The scent of brass polish and pressed fabric carried with it the weight of decades of service. "This credit union, Mr. Mitchell, sits on land that was once Fort Henderson. Sergeant Torres served on this base. He walked these halls when they were barracks. He stood guard where you now stand, protecting the very freedoms that allow you to question his service." Marcus, the security guard, stepped forward. "Colonel, I tried to—" "You did nothing wrong, Sergeant Johnson," she said, recognizing his own military bearing. "You were following civilian protocols, but this is where military protocol takes precedence." She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder marked with official seals. The leather portfolio creaked softly as she opened it, revealing documents stamped with the seal of the Department of Defense. Sergeant Torres's service record, classified operations in Helmand Province, Meritorious Service Medal, Purple Heart with Oak Leaf Cluster, Bronze Star with Valor Device. She placed the folder on the counter with a sound like thunder. "Shall I continue?" Brandon's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "But there's something else you should know, Mr. Mitchell," Colonel Valdez continued, her voice carrying a different tone now, personal, weighted with memory. 3 years ago, my nephew, Lieutenant David Valdez, was leading a convoy through Helmand Province when they hit an IED. The vehicle overturned, caught fire. 3 men were trapped inside. The lobby had become a church, silent and reverent. Even the air seemed to still. Sergeant Torres was part of a patrol 2 clicks away. When the call came in, protocol said to wait for EOD, wait for medevac, wait for backup. Her voice grew stronger. Sergeant Torres didn't wait. He ran toward that burning vehicle, alone, under sniper fire. He pulled 3 men out of that wreckage, including my nephew. She turned to Samuel, her military bearing softening just enough to show the ant beneath the colonel. David lost his leg that day, but he came home. He's a teacher now. Married. Has a little girl who draws pictures of soldiers. Samuel's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in his stoic composure. David. How is he? He's perfect, Colonel Valdez smiled. And he asked me to give you this when I found you. She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small photo, a little girl in pigtails holding a crayon drawing of a soldier. On the back, in child's handwriting, "For the hero who saved my daddy." The sound of sniffling broke the silence. Sarah, the young teller, wiped her eyes with a tissue. Several customers had their hands over their hearts. Marcus stood at full attention, his own military training taking over. "Sir," Sarah whispered, as she approached Samuel with the withdrawal slip already prepared. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Samuel looked at her with the same gentle eyes he'd used to comfort wounded soldiers. "It's not your fault," he said simply, accepting the cash and the respect that should have been his from the beginning. The transformation in the lobby was immediate and profound. Where moments before there had been skepticism and mockery, now there was something deeper, a silence that carried weight, respect, and recognition. Colonel Valdez reached into her jacket and withdrew a small velvet case. "Sergeant Torres, this belongs to you." She opened it to reveal a commemorative coin, not replacing his bronze star, but acknowledging his service in a way that transcended documentation. "The Fort Henderson Memorial coin," she explained, her voice softer now, carrying the warmth of burnished gold in afternoon light. "Given only to those who served on this base with distinction. We've been waiting for the right moment to present it." Samuel took the coin with careful hands, feeling its weight. Not just the metal, but the meaning behind it. The warm brass seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of honor itself. "Ma'am, I didn't serve for recognition." "No," Colonel Valdez smiled, the sound of her voice like a flag unfurling in morning breeze. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Around the lobby, something had shifted in the air. The fluorescent lights seemed warmer now, casting gentle shadows instead of harsh lines. The customers who had been filming now put away their phones. The elderly man who had been watching walked over to Samuel and extended his hand, the weathered skin telling its own story of service. "Navy, 1962 to 1968, he said simply, his grip firm as anchor chain. "Thank you for your service, son." A young woman approached hesitantly, her footsteps soft on the marble that had once been barrack floors. "My brother's in the Army. He's deploying next month. I'm sorry about what happened here." One by one, people began to step forward, not for photos or videos, but to offer quiet words of respect, of apology, of recognition. The air filled with the rustle of respectful movement, the soft murmur of genuine human connection. Marcus, the security guard, finally approached Samuel directly, his own service ribbons visible now on his civilian uniform. "Marine Corps 2003 to 2009, he said, the words carrying the weight of brotherhood. "Should have spoken up sooner, brother. That's on me." Samuel shook his hand firmly, the gesture creating a bridge across years and silence. "We all do what we can with what we know." Brandon Mitchell stood behind the counter, no longer the center of attention, no longer the confident manager who had controlled the narrative. He looked smaller somehow, deflated, as if the weight of his own words had finally settled on his shoulders like desert sand after a storm. Colonel Valdez walked to the memorial plaque on the wall, the same one Samuel had touched in his private moment of remembrance. She ran her finger along the names etched there, the bronze warm from the afternoon sun streaming through tall windows. This plaque lists the names of men and women who served on Fort Henderson. Their sacrifice made this community possible. Their service built the foundation for everything we have here. She looked directly at Samuel, her voice carrying the solemnity of taps played at sunset. Some of them came home. Some didn't. All of them deserved to be remembered. Samuel tucked the commemorative coin into his pocket alongside the faded letter from Maria's daughter and the photo of David's little girl. 3 small treasures that weighed more than all the gold in Fort Knox. He nodded to Colonel Valdez, shook Marcus's hand once more, and walked toward the exit with the same measured steps he'd used when entering. As he reached the door, he paused and looked back at the memorial plaque one more time. The names seemed to shimmer in the golden light, alive with memory and meaning. "Not a sound," he whispered to himself, and yet the room changed. The afternoon sun warmed his face as he stepped outside, the American flag across the street still waving in the gentle breeze that carried the scent of honor and the promise of remembrance. Behind him, the credit union had become something different. Not just a place of business, but a place where service was recognized, where dignity was restored, and where silence had spoken louder than any words. If this story touched you as much as it touched me while researching it, consider supporting this work. Each story takes hours to be treated with the respect these people deserve. Buy Me a Coffee link is pinned in the first comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. We have more stories that need to be told. See you in the next one.